So, have you ever been to Japan?
Once.
What was that like?
Oh, that was great. I went there, back in 1985, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And we took a tour. My husband and I took a tour, and what we did was visited all of my relatives. And that was quite a tremendous task because every relative you visit, you have to take them gift. I don't know if you ever heard them. Every place you go, you give them something, and they in turn give you they give you something. And so our suitcase, one suitcase was full of gifts, especially liquor. They love their liquor, so we gave them booze. But anyway, we had to be prepared because this was a 3-week tour.
Uh-huh.
So every place we went, we sort of made arrangements so they were expecting us. So it was interesting to just see them and live the way they did. Yeah. And at one place was when I visited this one household. This was my mother-in-law's sister that we visited. And it was so funny when we spoke to them. She had the same laughter exactly like my mother-in-law. When I first heard her talk and laughed, my daughter and I looked at each other and said, "Oh my God, she sounds just like her." Yeah, but we met all those relatives. They were so kind and very, hospitable, hospitable, and yeah, we had a great time visiting. Of course, you don't remember any of them, but every place we went, just about, they were very kind. Always had, meals ready for us and took us out or whatever, took us places to visit, and we also went to this hot springs. So, but we didn't go into the bath that they had. But and what they did in the hot spring, they were selling these. They would boil eggs in the hot springs. So I said, "Oh, these eggs are good. It's good for your body." So they were selling that. So that was interesting. But the rest of the part is typically, tourist town, and met my husband's, cousins and their family, and at one point when we stayed with his cousin, they loved to drink. So my husband loves to drink also. So he and his cousin, they were up all night drinking, and so the mother had to come out and practically take her to the bedroom. Of course, they slept on the floor, but I'm glad it was the floor. But he had a good time just drinking, and they enjoyed his company. But somehow I was able to converse with them, because when we were going to high school in Hawaii, we had this Buddhist church, and this Buddhist church had a Japanese school. So after our regular school, we would grab our other school bag and go to this church where they had classes. So we had classes maybe from about 3 o'clock, I think, maybe. Then Saturday was all day Japanese school. Mm-hmm. So this was run by the temple, the Japanese temple. So it was very well organized, and we all did, this was a way of life. It said, oh well, we were born here, we were raised here, and as you grew up, you kind of expected to do all these things. You didn't argue about it. It was just, you just did it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess some of them kind of strict, but I didn't think that my parents were strict. They just, we did what they told us. Mm-hmm. We didn't argue about it. Yeah.
Was there anything that really surprised you when you went to Japan? Did you think that people in Japan were very different than Japanese people in Hawaii?
They're about the same. They were very domineering, especially in one family that I stayed. The male was a dominant person, you can tell. Yeah, and he. So when I saw that, I said, "Oh, this is not the way of life for me." Having a, domineering person. So anyway, we keep thinking about when we got married. All of our sisters, we kind of compared our spouses, and we said, "Oh, we don't, yeah, our spouses are all very, bossy and domineering and telling you what to do." So anyway, somehow we survived with it all. Yeah. But anyway, in Japan, I could tell when there was one place we visited in Japan was Tom's uncle, and when we visited this one place, it was nice. After they visited this one area, they would they have a rest place where you can, will they serve tea or whatever, and actually like a little room where not like a hotel room, just a little room where you can rest before after your long trip. You get to rest there and relax, and they bring you tea, and his uncle, they brought the person working there at that place brought a tray of tea, so he kind of expected me to serve, like a regular, yeah. So I kind of felt that, well, this is not a way of life for me,
Yeah.
for somebody to tell me, Of course, I did that because I wanted to, but not because he told me to.
Yeah. And you didn't think families were like that as much in Hawaii?
I think there is still relatives about the same because basically most of them came from Japan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
But your family had been in Hawaii for a while. You don't feel like your dad was like that?
Yeah. Well, my I guess we basically obeyed, I guess you could say, what our parents wanted us to do and expected us to do. So we were basically never in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I remember when my oldest brother, he was caught smoking. He's not supposed to smoke.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he caught him with a cigarette, and he said, he asked him, where did you get that cigarette? And my brother said, "Oh, I'm holding it for my friend." So there are a lot of ways to get away, I guess, but you would think that they would, yeah, we kind of got used to it. So, yeah.
So you said that your grandparents were also born in Hawaii?
No.
Just your parents?
Just my parents.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you still feel like you have a certain connection to Japan, even though your family has grown up in Hawaii mostly?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Because, even though I visited Japan, and, I enjoyed the trip and I visited, all the relatives. That was a good part. But you still have your connection or ties back to Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
Because it seems Japan is like, it's an entirely different upbringing from the people in Hawaii. They're more relaxed. And in Japan, they have their certain ways of doing things. And so when I was in Japan, I enjoyed those things. I kind of observed what they did to certain things, and therefore I just went along with them, and thought to myself, oh, this is not the way of life for me. Mm-hmm. yeah.
So did your children marry people who were Japanese or Japanese American?
Oh, I have 3 children. Mm-hmm. One passed away early in 24, but I have a daughter married to Japanese, and my son, he's not married, but he has a Japanese girlfriend. Mm-hmm. And actually, his girlfriend is from Japan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but she's been out here for over 20 years, so she's fluent in both English and Japanese. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So would it be, how would you feel if one of your children was dating or married someone who wasn't Japanese? Would that be a strange thing for your family?
I don't know if you would call it strange, but I would accept the fact that, that's their life that's going to be, connected to it. So I would accept it. But when my daughter was in college, she did date, out of race. Mm-hmm. So, it was okay. I accepted that, and eventually I figured, well, they're going to get married, but they broke up, so maybe I was happy that he did this, but it was up to them. Mm-hmm. It was their life, so I wasn't going to interfere. Yeah, I'd rather keep it that way. At least that way you keep peace in the family. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And are there a lot of Japanese people or Japanese American people where you live now, or where your kids grew up in their high school?
In high school in Monrovia, there weren't that many. Mm-hmm. There were a few, because our neighbors, we didn't have that many Japanese living in our neighborhood, because basically where we lived, and because of the hardship of looking for a decent home, I guess they just selected a house that was, decent. And so I just, yeah, they were, because they did have a few Japanese family here and there in walking distance. Mm-hmm. So they were able to walk, and they would come over to our house, and especially my in-laws, and that was their only connection to Japanese, and they still kept ties with their relatives or friends that they had known in camp or whatever. So they would be in touch, and we would also have picnics, like annual picnics at the park. Mm-hmm. And all the relatives from the place that they came from in Japan, they would all get together for picnics. It was a big affair, because this was a one-time thing that they had a chance to talk about the old days when they were in Japan, and they all knew each other. So there was this was an enjoyable time for them. So it's an all-day thing that they would go to the park. They went to Elysian Park. That's where they went, and they would, make their lunches and spend all day at the park playing games and, all the fun things. So it was a good time for them. Yeah.
And how did you find this Japanese community center?
Oh gosh, let's see. Well, when I moved here to Monrovia, the Furukawa family had a connection with, he knew some people that belonged to this community center. Mm-hmm. And so we also had picnics then. And so they started off very small, and build up to what it is today. But when it started, I hardly knew anybody. It just through mutual friends. Then that grew, yeah. So, and eventually, when you start meeting other friends or relatives, you make connection, how they're related, and so that's the way I was able to meet other families and friends through the relatives and the connection that they had among each other. So eventually we all got to be great friends. Yeah.
So you spoke earlier about the difference coming from Hawaii and to California, being around people of many different races and the prejudices. Do you think that there was any specific prejudices that you felt because you were Japanese rather than of a different race?
Because of the race, there was prejudice, and people would notice. And this happened right after the war started, because even in Hawaii, when the war started, even the neighbors started calling us, with the, it's calling us name like the Jap, and we were friends and neighbors, but because we were Japanese, they started calling us names. So we had a, sort of a friction against each other because of that.
So that even happened in Hawaii?
Yeah.
And then was it much more intense in California? Did you see that a lot?
More in Hawaii, I would say. But then in California, probably they won't notice us as Japanese unless you spoke the language. But it depends where you lived, especially if you were in downtown Little Tokyo. If you were in downtown Little Tokyo, you sort of assimilated with the neighborhood, with other people around you, so you felt comfortable. But once you're back in your own town where you just don't have that many Japanese around you, then you don't, unless that person knew you, they would treat you differently, So, yeah.
Is there anything that you still feel nowadays being Japanese in California, or was that mostly like when you were much younger?
I guess when I was much younger, as I'm growing, older, it doesn't bother me. It's just like any other person. I treat them like any other person, not because of that person's race. But although in that the last house that we lived in Monrovia, they were basically all Spanish and blacks. And of course at that time there wasn't much the selection of the house. So we did okay as far as the neighbors, but one neighbor, oh gosh, he would play the loud music and practically vibrated our house. It was so loud. And so what I didn't like about them was they had no respect for the neighbors. They did whatever they could. So that's one of the negative feelings I have about them. Yeah. So. Yeah. But the direct neighbor they're nice. In fact, we sold our, we still see our neighbor once in a while. But somehow you get over it, especially when you get older. Your feelings are milder.
Do your Do your children speak Japanese?
I sent both of them to Japanese school when they were little,
Mm-hmm.
and my son didn't do very well because he went there just to play.
Mm-hmm.
But my daughter, she did okay because she finished her, I think when the school that they went to in Pasadena, it was a Saturday school that they went to. So she did okay. She finished school. Then after she got out of high school, then when she went to UCLA, she took some more Japanese. So in fact, I think she's better than I am. Then of course when she went to Japan to teach English, she took some more Japanese. So she was pretty good at it. But unless you speak it, you use it, you lose it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to keep up. But then her husband's family, they speak Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
So at least I'm sure she must speak to them in Japanese.
Yeah, she gets a lot of practice.
Yeah. But where I lived, I had my mother-in-law live with us. Because after her husband passed away, that's one of the reasons why we moved back to Monrovia. She spoke Japanese, so I had to speak the language. But then, of course, at home in Hawaii, I spoke Japanese to my parents.
Mm-hmm.
So, but then in Hawaii, you spoke also Pidgin English. I guess you heard of Pidgin English?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess it was easier to communicate through that language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was there any language shock when you came to California? Was there a totally different way that?
No, it was not, because it was still English,
Mm-hmm.
but they tried to avoid using Pidgin because
Mm-hmm.
they wouldn't understand you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not only understand you, but the accent, is a little different.
Yeah.
So you can tell when you meet people from Hawaii, their accent and the language is a little different. It's a little harsh, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good description of it. Very harsh. But somehow when I got here, I said, I caught myself talking the language, Pidgin English, so I kind of forced myself to speak regular English.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that you went to a Buddhist temple in Hawaii?
Well, my parents were very strong Buddhists.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the town where I lived, my parents were both very active in the community. So he was basically in charge. And so the Buddhist priest, he didn't drive, so my father would, take him around to the next town for their service, and then we would drive back. But whenever they have meetings after the Buddhist service or whatever, he would invite some of the members to come to our home and just have coffee and socialize. So they were pretty strong. So, but even after I came out here, I had to make a decision, or did make a decision. I thought of this here. They have a Buddhist church here, but I didn't join any church until my kids were little, growing up, and met a family who went to a Christian church.
Mm-hmm.
And this church was right there in Monrovia. It's like a regular home that they converted to a church. So we took my children to that church, to that Christian church. Then this was in Monrovia. Then they moved to Baldwin Park. So I kind of followed them to Baldwin Park and took my kids there. But I still didn't attend the church.
Mm-hmm. Just for your kids, you brought them?
I just took them for the church. I didn't attend the church.
Mm-hmm.
Then finally, we moved to West Covina. That's where we are at now. So I finally, I think in Baldwin Park, I became a Christian. Then followed them on to West Covina.
Mm-hmm.
So So I never did go to this church, the Buddhist church here. I was always a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but I'm the only one because my kids didn't, of course I took them as a little, as kids, took them to the Sunday school and learn everything else. But once they're out of high school, they get out of touch and they don't continue,
Mm-hmm.
which is a disappointment. But, it's up to them. It's their life,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But they don't feel any connection with, like, Buddhism or anything?
No, I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what was it strange for you to just completely leave the like Buddhism that you grew up with in your family, or you didn't have that much interest in it when you were younger in Hawaii?
Well, when I was in Hawaii, I went to the Buddhist church because my parents were very strongly, Buddhist.
Mm-hmm.
So I went along with them. However, when I do go to a funeral, especially to a Buddhist funeral, every time I go in there, I said, "Oh, this is not for me," because I don't understand anything that they do
Mm-hmm.
besides chanting and all that. I said, "Oh, so I have this thing against them." So I just went along. I said, "Oh," so I always tell myself, "Oh, I'm so glad I'm a Christian." Yeah.
Are there any other, like, Japanese customs or, like, things that you left behind in Hawaii that's, like, different, that you might have grown up with but you didn't pass on to your children that you can think of?
Well, just the holidays,
Mm-hmm.
Especially the New Year's, when we make the special food. Yeah. So even now, for New Year's, I have all my family over.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of nieces and nephews here. So I always invite them for New Year's, which we make special New Year's food. But it's gradually getting away from the traditional Japanese food,
Mm-hmm.
because as they grow older, they rather have the regular meatballs and spaghetti and all that kind of food instead of Japanese food. And one thing the tradition what we have is the rice cake.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you heard of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, that's what we have in the morning. So I prepare that New Year's morning, and when my nieces and nephew come over, I serve that to my younger nieces and nephew, and they enjoy that. It's something different, and that's the only time they have a chance to eat that food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and of course they still like sashimi and sushi, but other than that, they prefer the regular, American food.
I'm trying to think of, like, some of the questions that a lot of these questions are like about what was it like to immigrate to the United States.
Oh.
But you were like,
Yeah.
but you were
Yeah.
born in Hawaii, so it's a little bit different. But
Yeah.
I'm just gonna browse through them for a second.
Oh, okay.
we can stop recording just so that